Hey everybody, welcome back to another Film of the Week. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. This is a little bit of a late Film of the Week, mainly due to the fact that I actually went into work today being, well, not today being Sunday. Um, and I just, again, was busy surfing, enjoying my summer and stuff like that. And I had planned on doing something different for this Film of the Week, but I completely I forgot, or at least was informed, uh, according to the internet, that there's a film that is actually carrying its 50th anniversary. Had its 50th anniversary June 20th, so 2 days late. So I figured to dedicate a video to that specific film, and then we'll push the other film that I had recorded and stuff, and we'll have that be next week's Film of the Week. So that film we're going to discuss briefly is, of course, Jaws. This was directed, of course, by Steven Spielberg, released in 1975. Of course, became the prototypical summer blockbuster. In that it was, for a little while, the highest-grossing film of all time. Of course, Star Wars would come out a couple years later to top that, and then other films, so on and so on. But Jaws is that originator by the sheer amount of money that was procured within this, within this specific feature. This was Spielberg's second feature. Obviously, Spielberg would go on to do many motion pictures, but Jaws was pretty much his big bite, to use a phrase, into the Hollywood sphere as it is. This stars Roy Scheider, I think that's how you say his name, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, as well as a couple of players here and there. And as the story goes, as everybody probably knows, it is about a shark that terrorizes a small little town, and it is up to a police chief, Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider, a fisherman, played by Robert Shaw, and a scientist, played by Richard Dreyfuss. Or I think I got those two mixed up. I think the scientist is Robert Shaw, and the fisherman is Richard Dreyfuss. These three go off, and they go on this quest to find this killer shark, this great white, and to take it down, and to save their little town. And as far as as film goes, I mean, it's obviously incredibly noteworthy in pop culture. Everybody probably knows Jaws, and many people probably can remember seeing Jaws in the theaters. My mom, before watching this, told me of her little small experience of watching it in the theater, and 50 years later, it still rather resonates because there are aspects to it that are still quite riveting. Now, the way I will frame this is I will address also the other notable thing about Jaws, which is a lot to do with its production, because infamously the production ran into many issues, many technical problems, a lot of issues within the cast. A lot of the cast didn't get along with each other. Yeah, Spielberg kind of described it in presenting this 50th anniversary. It was kind of a chaotic mess, and to some extent, in terms of the overall edits, in terms of the technical, just visual look of the film, it definitely shows. There's points to where they tried to illustrate nighttime. It's clearly daytime. There's at one point a shooting star that casts through a very, very clear daytime shot, but they're trying to illustrate a nighttime or at least an evening type shot, and it's obviously you filmed that around noon or something like that. And while the performances themselves are well, and they are interesting to follow, there are points where they do feel rather stiff, and that might be due to just the script, as it were. And in the wording and just the overall delivery of that script, also, it is at some points a little bit more wordy than actually informative. It does develop the characters, and it does give them some identities in terms of the framework of what we're after, which is, of course, this great white shark. Excuse me, as my cat is trying to get through here. But But it does make some tangible sense, once they explain each person's motivations. There's someone who's afraid of the water. There's someone who has these, in the scientist part of you, he's just has a great fascination about sharks. And then when you get to the fisherman, he has a traumatic experience with such creatures. So there's motivations there. And, and performances wise, there's stuff there. I just think that on a technical level, there are issues of that are apparent, and it is a film that is pretty much to its core that of a slasher, but it tries to be more than that. According to the Wikipedia page, at least, Spielberg tried to approach it in the vein of a Hitchcock, and the tension definitely breeds that within a Hitchcock, and those sensibilities of like kind of just plotting out tension in the vein of letting it sit and not necessarily having it just orchestrated. And definitely it earns at points. There's points when that shark becomes present, and it definitely instills a little bit of that fear, but both in a practical sense and within its overall edits. But it does feel a bit waned. It does feel as though it's stretched, and it doesn't feel that it is. It doesn't feel it is as earnest. And again, I think a lot of it has to do by technicality, a lot to do with the editing, a little bit of which to do with those performances, which can be a little stale. But in terms of its overall craftsmanship, in terms of its overall just literal just construction of how it is made, it's commendable, and it works well in certain respects within its performances, within its practical nature, within some points of just building of tension. And I do like the stark contrast between its first half to its second half, to where the first half is all to do on land, and the second half is all to do of the sea. Generally, how it is structured, there is a sense of identity there, and a sense of rhythm, and a sense of just pure direction. But within the overall just literal of material, in that raw material, within just the framing of its images, and then just the performances themselves, you can sense a little bit of distortion going on, a little bit of a mess, as it were, as per the production was itself. So it does feel long-winded. It does feel a little, I will admit, a little bit tiresome, but there is an intrigue there. I mean, you get decent performances, you get a decent sense of developments within each of these characters, both of which has to do with the writing and the performance themselves, and the overall practical nature of its story, being out at sea, the underwater shots, the literal practical nature of the shark is all well and good. But there also lies the inherent problem with the film as well, once you also consider the production itself and how it tried to make all these things function. For a lot of its time, it feels, like I said, it just feels a lot of its time, it's just rather extended. Like, I feel like this film would have worked a lot better if it was like trimmed down even further. I feel like even like an hour and a half, I feel it would be a lot more tighter and a lot more convincing. But as it stands, like I said, just feels long-winded. It just feels as though that there is a loss of momentum at some points, and then it's rejuvenated, and then it's lost again. So I feel like a tighter nature of time would have helped it a lot more, and would have shielded a lot more of the issues that are taking place, because the cracks do show, in my personal opinion. And thankfully it doesn't alleviate from my overall experience with the film, but it is there, it shows that it is a film of issues, but thankfully it's not ones that take hold of the film entirely. It's not in the case of like a film like Blade Runner, but even then with Blade Runner, I still think that there's many things about it that make it so amazing. In the case of Jaws, though, I feel as though that it's a little bit more apparent, but similar to my feeling about Blade Runner, the positives in the performances, in terms of its general just laying out of storytelling within just this visual distinction between going from land to sea. There are things there to take note of, but I don't sit here and say that Jaws is a perfect film or a great film. I take it as one of Spielberg's lesser offerings, to be honest with you. He's gotten a lot better since Jaws, way better than Jaws. But you know, it's a classic for a specific reason. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it is one of those quintessential slashers. It's not labeled as such, but it has the spirit and the mentality of it. I just wish that it recognized that more. I wish Spielberg tapped into that idea a little bit more, and it might have in fact been a lot more entertaining as a result. But Spielberg wanted to do something a little bit more flavorful and a little bit more further developed. And in doing so, I feel he comes up a little more dry. Comes up a little bit short. And as it stands, like I said, just feels as though that we're kind of circling around and not necessarily driving the plot forward in more meaningful or interesting directions outside of just there's a shark in the water and we got to kill it. It's kind of what it amounts to. I don't necessarily need a film to be 2 hours in that specific direction. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Jaws. I think it's fine. That's as far as I'll take it. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's I do think though that there are still, in the vein of like what Jaws did, like instilling fear of the shark, definitely that feeling of fear is still present. But I just don't think generally as a film, how it is crafted, I just feel that there are issues there, and it raises it to a place of mediocrity, and that's as far as I believe it will go for me. But you guys know your thoughts on Jaws if you guys have seen it. It's available on Peacock if you guys haven't seen it. It's one of the more classic movies out there, so be a little surprising if you haven't seen it. But everybody, I didn't see Jaws until like a few years ago, so so I'm believing there's a ton of movies that I have yet to see also. But you guys have your thoughts on Jaws if you guys have seen it. If you guys have seen the sequels, because I know they've done a couple of films relating to Jaws after this. And let me know, your favorite films involving Spielberg and your thoughts on the production itself. It has definitely an interesting history to it. I'm curious if you guys have more insight. I like to know a few things regarding the production. But let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.